her office in 1972 as she greeted a stream of students. She was unfailingly warm and welcoming. I do, however, recall her confronting the young man for his failure to come to class. This points to another of her character traits. She was no pushover. She defended her teaching profession fiercely. She was a tender romantic who kept her standards. Shirley met my father, William Young, a professor of political science at Sonoma State University in 1971. They were married in 1974 and lived together in a house in a cul-de-sac on Borden Villa Drive in Santa Rosa until Dad passed away in 1995. They were very happy together. I am grateful to Shirley for what she gave to my father. She walked into his life, threw open the windows, and let in the fresh air and the sunlight. Suddenly, he was free. One of Shirley's signature qualities was her wit, which my father loved. The air around her was thick with wordplay and good and bad puns. Here's a small example of Shirley's wit. Dad's parents, Louis and Luella, come to Santa Rosa for a visit. Louis drove them all out toward Jenner so that they could tour the Russian River. At Jenner, they wound up a hill, turned a corner, and suddenly there it was, spread out in front of them, the Pacific Ocean. My grandfather, jokingly, to Shirley, the Russian River? Shirley to my grandfather, the Russians always do things in such a big way. By the way, my grandfather was a politically incorrect male that Shirley really liked. Shirley and Bill threw themselves into travel. In 1977, they took a 3-month around-the-world trip that included the Trans-Siberian Railroad, Moscow, Eastern Europe, and the United Kingdom. In 1984, they visited China. They took frequent weekend jaunts to Fort Bragg and to Carson City and to Louis and Luella's home in Portland. Shirley was an intrepid traveler. Although she disliked structured physical exercise, she was game to walk across any world capital. Illness and loss touched Shirley's life in the mid-1980s. Her beloved mother, pen pal, and traveling companion, Marguerite, passed away after surgery. And Bill, my father, showed the first symptoms of Parkinson's disease, which advanced rapidly and made it necessary for Shirley to become his caretaker. She took this on with dedication over an entire decade. She never lost her love for him in the face of a terrible decline. She loved him for his essence, which couldn't be destroyed by evil circumstances. For her care of him, I will always be grateful. Shirley retired from teaching in 1996. Her retirement lasted almost as long as her teaching career. She continued to live in a house on Borden Villa Drive until 2002. In those years, she traveled the world with her sister Judy, her ex-sister-in-law Arlene Bateman, and friends Lucy Brandon and Meg Ellingson. She visited New York City with her son Garwood. She had season tickets for the San Francisco Opera and enjoyed Berkeley Rep, ECT, San Francisco Ballet, and the Santa Rosa Symphony. Shirley reveled in her grandchildren, Elizabeth Wyatt Hayes, born 1997, Caroline Georgia Hayes, born 1999, Nathaniel Myers Kotite Gerard, born 1999, and Dana Timothy Hayes, born 2003. She plied them with books and toys and watched them cavort on the beach in Santa Cruz. At Christmas, she and the children observed the tradition of listening to Dylan Thomas reading A Child's Christmas in Wales. In 2002, Shirley moved to a home on Creekside Road, where she lived with daughters Rebecca and Gabrielle and grandson Nathaniel. The Hayes family, Tim, Erica, and children, and son Garwood, with his wife Karen, were frequent visitors. Shirley stayed close with her brother Garwood and his wife Evelyn in Modesto, and with me, my sister Nancy, and my brother Tom. In 2006, Shirley took one last trip to Europe with Erica. The two met up with Phyllis Kotite in Paris and had a grand adventure afterwards in Bruges. Despite increasing deafness and some health issues that hampered her mobility, the years from 2004 to 2014 passed happily. In 2014, Shirley found the big house to be too much for her and took Sister Judy's offer to move into an adjoining studio on Judy's property on a hillside above Bennett Valley. I was fortunate to visit Shirley in her studio at Judy's house many times. Shirley and Judy enjoyed receiving visitors, and there was a stream of them, friends and family, as well as beloved caregiver Janet. Shirley's Siamese cat, Athena, was never far from her side. Grandson Nathaniel became a treasured weekly visitor. Niece Georgia lived in a cottage on the property. I was the happy recipient of many cards and letters from Shirley, which were full of puns and witticisms, and accompanied by pictures that Shirley cut out of magazines, as well as her own colored drawings. Frequently, she would gift me with books from her library. I had the impression that Shirley was creatively letting go. Whatever sense of self-importance she may have had in her life, she was now tossing to the wind. Shirley suffered unfathomably tragic losses in this period. Her son Garwood passed away suddenly with stage 4 lung cancer in 2014. This was followed by the death of her daughter, Gabrielle, 2 years later, and by the death of her grandson, Nathaniel, Rebecca's son, in 2020. It was a revelation to witness Shirley's suffering of these losses. She was so steadfast, courageous, and majestic in her grief. It seemed as though she went deep inside herself. And yet, she had the capacity to keep on living. When guests came, she still had that broad, beautiful smile and gave a warm welcome. In January of 2022, Shirley took a bad fall and became bedridden. Her heroic caretakers, Janet, Josephine, Rose, and Gannett, banded together and committed themselves to long shifts so that Shirley could stay at home. On April 6, 2022, Shirley passed away peacefully with her cat, Athena, at her side. I would like to end with a vignette from my conversations with Shirley that cheers me and gives me reason for hope. Shirley and I used to talk about Bill, my father, her husband. I miss him terribly, she would say. He was a prince among men. One day, I said loudly into her hard of hearing ear, "To me, he seems immortal. I feel that way, she replied. And I think of Garwood. They were princes. Princes among men. It was a natural feeling that we were expressing, and not any kind of a religious doctrine. It is natural to feel that our departed ones are still alive, and that we are in community with them. It is natural to remember them, and to sense them, to imagine them as they might be now. In that spirit, let us remember all the characters in the book of Shirley's life that are no longer with us. Let us remember Father Garwood Sr., Mother Marguerite, Brother Garwood Jr., Husband Bill, Son Garwood Nicholas, Daughter Gabrielle, and grandson Nathaniel. May their memory live in our hearts forever. And let us remember Shirley Myers Kotite Young, our mother, grandmother, sister, mentor, and friend. Shirley, we promise that we will never forget you. May your memory live in our hearts forever.